Shadowland. They've got fire, they've got style, they make chaos look worthwhile. Partners in crime, heartbeats aligned, together they're one of a kind. They're the couple that slays together, storming the world, it's now or never. Back to back, through thick and thin, in the game of life they always win. Blazing trails, leaving legends behind. Love so fierce, it's one of a kind. We're the couple that slays together. Oh.
Welcome back to The Couple That Slays Together. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Katie.
Hey, how you doing, Katie?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
Doing good.
We are officially on our episode number 4.
Yep.
So I feel like we're gaining some momentum, gaining some steam.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited for this one. This is one of my favorites.
Yeah, I am too. Not particularly this film, but Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees, one of my absolute favorites. You know, the later sequels, I know take some crap, but I love them so much. We're in just such a good time for horror, it's still the beginning of 2025 when we're recording this episode. It's end of January. Tell you what, I'm really looking forward to seeing Hard Eyes.
Yeah.
That's like the next big slasher film.
Yep.
I'm so excited for that.
I am very excited to see that one. And can we give props that The Substance is up for?
Yes.
Is it Oscar?
Yeah, it's for an Academy Award.
A horror movie. That's awesome.
Only ever happened 7 times in the history of film.
Yeah.
So
and personally, The Substance to me, like, take it or leave it. There were some amazing things in that movie. I get the overall general theme. But props where props are due. The graphics and the effects and the stage makeup and the work that went into that, they more than deserve. And Demi Moore.
Yep.
Got her first award for it. That's
Golden Globe.
Yeah, I did not even know that she hadn't
She's
ever received an award before. It's amazing.
And not only is The Substance nominated, the film is nominated for Best Picture, she's up for an Academy Award for Best Actress.
Yeah.
And 5 total nominations.
It's amazing.
I don't usually watch award shows. I'm going to watch for this.
Yeah.
Particularly for this, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a Wicked fan as well.
Yeah.
In my personal opinion, I know there are differing opinions about this, even between us. As much as I loved Abigail, and as much as Abigail was my favorite horror film of 2024, I will go on record to say that, in my opinion, I felt that The Substance was the best horror film of 2024. Not my favorite. I loved it, but it was the best, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Such a great concept. I love how they, it was a fresh idea. I feel like there's going to probably be a couple of copycats out of that. Who knows? We even said that Grafted, a New Zealand horror film,
had a similar feel.
It had a similar feel, not exactly to a T, but it felt that way. Our good friend Jared Turner is in that one, and we're going to be talking to him on this podcast / channel soon.
Yeah. I urge you all to watch Grafted.
Yeah. I highly recommend both Grafted and The Substance. They're very similar. The Substance, I will argue, is a little better, and nothing against a New Zealand picture or obviously our friend Jared, but The Substance, it was just we saw that first. It was such an original piece. Loved it. Some other big news. In our last episode, we had just found out that Scott Foley, my favorite Ghostface Roman Bridger, is returning to Scream 7. We found out before recording this episode that Matthew Lillard is coming back as Stu in this film.
Yeah, I literally just said that I wanted to see more of.
Yep.
We've gotten really heavy on the Billy Loomis.
Yep.
But even from just the second one,
Yep.
Billy's mother.
I
I would love to see more of what happened with Stu, if he lived, if he died, if there's family members, all of that.
I am not going to reveal my source, just because it would be wrong of me to do, but I actually knew this. I found out a couple weeks ago and was quite excited, kept my mouth shut about it, but Matthew Lillard did not keep his mouth shut about it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
it was,
love that it's confirmed.
it was confirmed to me when I found out.
Yeah.
I
guess publicly confirmed.
Yeah. I almost wanted to hold that secret for longer. Like it would have been cool to be in the know longer, but the fact that it's out there is really cool. And it was reported the same day, like 2 hours from each other. Now, I will say that I felt like the thunder was stolen a little bit from Foley returning. Yeah. And it also does kind of concern me a little bit too, because it's like, well, okay, if they're both back and we've already had Billy back.
Yeah. In his way.
Skeet already. Yeah. I wonder if they're just going to do this, if they're going to be dream sequences.
Yeah, that's what in the last episode is stated, I wonder if they will, if Stu's truly dead, if he's going to be back the way that Billy did or what.
My personal fan vision of this, I try not to do this because I don't want to ruin it for myself. Mm-hmm. I can already tell you right now, I had the perfect story idea for Toy Story 5. Then when I heard that they were the story that they're going with, I'm like, that's not what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I don't mean to sound like a typical Star Wars or Power Rangers fan, because a lot of those fan bases, they like to make things either better or different in their eyes than what we actually get on screen. But I think it would be cool if they brought, because I know I heard, or at least in some of the original script ideas or drafts, if you will, Scream, the seventh one is kind of supposed to be a little bit more of a situational, like the original Purge film, or that film Hush, the Mike Flanagan. I heard it's supposed to be more of like a situational house film as opposed to multiple sets, multiple scenes. I could be wrong. I don't know if that's true, but in my thinking, I thought it would be neat. Now, again, this is just, I don't know a thing. All I was told from a I'm not gonna reveal my source, but that's all I knew. I knew he was coming back. But in my thinking of this, ever since there have been talks, I think it would be really cool if somehow Stu lived through the television smashing his head or face or whatever. And he's got a messed up side face where he doesn't have an eye. He's got some kind of contact in, and it's blue or burnt out from and somehow one of Sydney's daughters, depending on how old they are, I think they're teenagers. Somehow he lived through it, was able to meet somebody and have a son, and that the killer was attacking around the house.
Romeo and Juliet kind of a thing?
Well, not necessarily that, but it would be kind of cool if Stu was the outside killer, if you could see the killer from the outside, but people are dying inside or something, and it's Stu and his son are a tag team, at the end, the mask reveal is the unmasked reveal where they, because there's only been 3 killers to actually go, 4 killers. Yes. 4 killers to take their mask off and reveal their identities. And you can fact check me on that. I believe it's 4. Quinn,
Roman.
Oh, I might be Jill, Roman, Quinn, and Ethan.
Well, if you want to get technical, I can't remember the name of the one that does the beginning.
Jason, so 5.
Yeah,
there've been 5. I do count him. Yeah. I know there are people out there that don't.
I mean, technically, he wore Ghostface and he killed someone.
Wore the suit.
Yeah.
Made the phone call.
Yeah.
Used the voice changer. He fits all the boxes.
Yeah.
I don't care if he didn't make it all the way. I don't care if another killer killed him. He still counts, and I still say there's 13 killers. We'll get into that when we talk more about Scream. But anyway, I think it would be cool if
you want to use that criteria, then there's also Sydney in the first one.
Well, and Sam, but they're the good guys killing the bad guys.
I know, but I mean the criteria. She made the phone call. She used the voice.
Fair.
And she pulled off the mask.
Yep. Yeah. Well, but anyway, what I was getting at is I think it would be neat if Stu was the the unmask, and he's
Mhm.
got his face all screwed up, messed up. But then his son is one of the boyfriends, like at the Christmas dinner, because it's supposed to be a Christmas movie, supposedly.
Oh.
So, but that's all that we've been told.
Wait, I kind of hope it doesn't do that. I the situational thing is already gonna make it have a different feel than all the other screams that we've had.
Yeah.
One. Then you've got at Christmas time. How heavy on the Christmas time are we doing this? Are they on Christmas break from college and they happen to come back home and it's not really all that Christmassy?
Yeah.
Or, is it the Die Hard as a Christmas movie? Or is it going to be like, a pivotal plot point? I don't know that I want my Scream to be mixed in with this. Terrifier 3 was good. Did it have to be Christmas? Debatable.
I thought it worked.
It worked, but it didn't have to be.
Yeah.
It didn't have to be heavy on it. I mean, there was, one particular scene with a Santa Claus, but I if we're gonna have, uh Sydney back and we've got Stu back, we've got Roman back, I don't want it to feel like a different movie. I want it to feel.
Well, that's fair, but I also want them to be utilized not in just like a dream sequence. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
I know it'll be hard to bring Roman back with the shot to the head. I don't necessarily like the idea of him being a twin, like what you suggested last time.
Yeah.
We'll just have to see.
Yeah.
We've always, and I'm also curious to see how Chad and Mindy are going to be involved, because
Chad just is the character that could be a pincushion, right?
I know
Poor guy.
he's this generation's Dewey on steroids, if you will. I mean, that guy's just been stabbed back and forth.
If he doesn't have the Dewey limp,
Right.
yeah. I'm excited that he's okay. It is the one, the one death that was, I loved it, but I hated it in the latest Scream. But
and it also makes me wonder too, like, how are these two going to do it without Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barrera? Because I mean, it also makes me wonder. I mean, because they're rolling out these cast announcements one by one by one, and with Wednesday,
they're next.
I do too. And with Wednesday being done with season 2, I don't know. I mean, Jenna Ortega is a workhorse, so I mean, she is like the nowadays. She and Melissa both are just those awesome nowadays scream queens.
Chameleon.
Yeah, well that Well, that and Ortega is just a workhorse. She's always working.
I don't know if I'd be curious when she actually has a day off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and she doesn't do the cons, so she's obviously not. I mean, Melissa does, but Jenna doesn't. It's funny that Jenna is kind of that Gale character. I mean, both Courtney and Jenna aren't in the convention scene like everybody else. It's a little bit of a bummer, but it would be whatever. Maybe one day.
I just really feel like they deserve their third in a trilogy.
They do.
You could end it where they ended it and say it was a bookend, but I don't want that to be their bookend.
Well, and also I'd like to see if there is a romance possibility for Ortega and Chad.
Yeah.
I know I'm saying.
Yeah. Same. 100% same.
Yeah.
But this episode, we're gonna go off of Scream here.
Yep.
This episode, we're going to be reviewing the original Friday the 13th, 1980.
Yep. The very first Friday the 13th. Katie, do you want to go through the subgenre on this one?
Sure. Yeah. So, obviously, this is a film, and I selected that it's a slasher, a teen, suspense, thriller, and then we've got another slash abuse / revenge. But I circled just revenge, being at the end when we find out the why. I thought that revenge was appropriate.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you have anything different?
I just honestly have 3. I have slasher, teen, and suspense. Did you have teen on there? I'm not sure if you did.
Yeah, I had teen, and I put suspense and thriller. I think this was the time when we kind of looked up the definition between suspense and thriller, and it's slightly different.
Yep.
But I put down that this could fall in both.
Yep. This film was written by Victor Miller and Ron Kurz, directed by Sean S. Cunningham. This film stars Adrienne King as Alice. We have the legendary Betsy Palmer as Pamela Voorhees. Rest in peace to her. I'm really bummed. I'd seen video clips of her at cons and how wonderful and joyous she was with fans, and I just I'm really bummed that I hit the convention scene after her time. Richard Brooker, who played Jason Voorhees in Part 3, I also missed out on. I'm really bummed. Anyway, so this film stars a young Kevin Bacon as Jack. This was not his first film. I believe it was his third. I was looking to see where it fell in his IMDb, and it was toward the beginning. So third, fourth, something like that. Robbie Morgan as Annie. Janine Taylor as Marcy. Walt Gurney as Crazy Ralph. Ron Millicky as Officer Dorf. And a young Ari Lehman as Jason Voorhees, as we have a little head bust of him there. Our quick little plot summary here is a group of teenage camp counselors attempt to reopen an abandoned summer camp with a tragic past, but they are stalked by a mysterious, relentless killer. This film was pivotal. This film was pivotal in popularizing the slasher genre, combining a classic whodunit mystery with graphic kills and an eerie camp setting. I actually recently did add mystery to our horror subgenre, so I'm going to throw that back up and check that box as well. All right. Our opening scene, the film begins in a set with a prologue in the year 1958 at Camp Crystal Lake. Two camp counselors, Barry and Claudette, sneak away from a group singing around the campfire for a private moment in a storage loft. As they prepare to engage in an intimate moment, an unseen assailant interrupts them. Barry is stabbed to death, while Claudia is chased and murdered off screen. This establishes the film's mysterious killer and sets a sinister tone. You know, when I first watched this, not recently, but when I watched it years ago for the first time, it was interesting that the killer was killing from a first-person point of view. Mm-hmm. I don't mind that setting, but I don't prefer it. I like the close-up third-person point of view, kind of like what they did in A Violent Nature. I like how you could see his head still and kind of see how things are happening.
It was almost like a third-person video game where you're behind and you can still see the character.
Yep. We then fast forward to present day, where they are en route to a camp. A young woman named Annie, walking into a small rural town, asks for directions to Camp Crystal Lake, which locals ominously refer to as Camp Blood. A diner patron offers her a ride to the outskirts, but the local eccentric Ralph, the old crazy Ralph, warns her to stay away, proclaiming, "It's got a death curse." Annie continues hitchhiking and is picked up by an unseen driver. As the conversation grows tense, the driver speeds past the camp's entrance. Annie jumps out of the moving vehicle, but is pursued into the woods and killed with a throat slash. Again, another first-person point of view kill. What do you think of that?
So I love Annie's character.
Yep.
I realize that she doesn't make it to the camp, but I noted something here, and this may be getting ahead of the plot a little bit, but when we find out that the killer driving her in the Jeep is actually Jason's mother, a female, driving her, I feel like that's a creepier thought. It just, I don't know, say it's from a woman's lens here, but you're hitchhiking, you're trying to get to a job, you're young 20-something, late teen, and you probably think, oh, phew, it's a middle-aged woman.
Yep.
I'm safe, right? Versus maybe thinking, oh, a trucker that's a man, i.e. Joyride,
Yep.
versus, Mrs. Voorhees. And then to have that finale, that throat slit, I think it was beautifully done.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite scenes. But I just thought that was such a creepy layer to it.
One interesting thing I saw in this scene was, did you notice how the trucker grabbed her ass as he was putting her into the truck? I'm like, okay, that's a little bit of a sign of the time, but also a little bit of a cop of a feel.
Yeah.
A trucker, but
it lends to what I just said too. She's probably thinking, oh, good, it's a woman. I'm not gonna have a man grab my butt like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So then our next scene, we see our counselors arriving at Camp Crystal Lake. The story shifts focus to a group of young counselors arriving at the camp to prepare for its reopening. The teenagers include Alice, Bill, Macy, Jack, Brenda, and Ned, as well as the camp owner, Steve Christie. They're upbeat and playful, unaware of the looming danger. The group spends time fixing the cabins, swimming, and joking around. Ned's antics, including to pretending to drown, foreshadows the careless behavior that often leads to doom in slasher films. You know, what I really liked about this movie is this one, and we kind of talked about this a little bit in our Nightmare on Elm Street episode, where, you know, you didn't know that you kind of thought Tina was going to be the final girl until she started having, causing mischief and, sleeping with Rod. And then it shifts focus to Nancy. This, I feel like, takes it a step further and buries the fact that you don't know who the final girl is at the beginning. You don't know that it's going to be Alice. You think it's like, okay, who, or in the rare case that there's a final boy, because there is sometimes a final boy, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, the final guy. They have a girl in there too, but
and sometimes there's none. There's
yeah,
or
Freddy versus Jason, a man and a woman survive.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's you don't know who that sole survivor is yet, and they're doing a good job of kind of equally distributing the footage and like the character development for this. We now arrive at the first kill of the camp. Ned wanders into a cabin after seeing a shadowy figure inside. His death occurs off screen, but his absence becomes noticeable as the story progresses. We then lead to Jack and Marcy's demise. That evening, they sneak off to a cabin and they have sex. First rule of slashers: you don't have sex. You can never have sex.
No.
Gave
it away. You're a virgin.
Unbeknownst to them, Ned's body is lying in the bunk above. After their encounter, Marcy leaves and Jack is killed when an arrow is thrust into his neck from underneath the bed. This is Kevin Bacon's character.
Yeah, and one thing I gotta ask you, I don't know if you noticed this or if you thought of this, but does that mean that Mrs. Voorhees was under the bed while they were having sex?
I wondered that too, but yeah.
How else?
Yeah.
I mean, how else? There was no ability to sneak in and get under that bed.
Yeah. There are a couple of her kills, and we'll get into that, but a couple of her kills just don't make sense to me.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
And not to gender stereotype, not to age stereotype, not to bring any stereotypes.
Yep.
But judging from who we find out who the killer is, obviously is Mrs. Voorhees, as we've been saying.
Yep.
Versus the type of kills that you see.
Yep.
It's hard to believe that a woman of her age, size, stature, everything could do some of these things.
Well, I said the same thing too. How did she overpower Ned?
Right.
One, then get him into a different cabin. So you're dragging this completely dead weight. Now he's not a big person, but still you're dragging dead weight to another cabin and then getting said dead body up on the bunk above.
Yep.
And making it stable enough that while a couple is enjoying adult time on the bottom bunk, he's not falling out.
Right.
It's not, that setup alone is kind of it's hard to even imagine one adult grown man being able to do all that. Now, of course, throughout the franchise, we get Jason, who seems super strong, superpowers, all these things. But this is not him. This is Mrs. Voorhees.
His mom.
Yeah. And I would venture to say upper middle-aged.
Yep.
If you think about it, Jason would have drowned in 1957.
Yep.
So this is 1980. So if you're doing the math, he would be what, 40? And she's his mom, so she would be at least
70s, 80s,
60s. I mean, if she had him super young, Anyway, it is hard to imagine.
Math ain't math in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Marcy meets her end moments later. She hears a noise in the bathroom and investigates. That same shadowy figure emerges and kills her with an axe to the face. We then see Brenda is lured out of her cabin by the sound of a child's voice crying for help. She ventures to the archery range, where lights suddenly come on, blinding her. Her death is not shown, but her screams are heard, adding to the suspense.
I want to say about her killing. Can we just, as a fandom, agree to have like the Appalachian Woods rule, where if you hear something in the woods at night, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
If you hear someone calling out for
Lock
help,
the door.
no, you didn't.
Yeah.
You didn't. Don't go investigate by yourself. Don't. No.
Yep. Steve had left he left the camp earlier in the evening to gather supplies. On his way back, he encounters the killer, but seems to recognize the killer. Before he can react, he is stabbed, and his death is obscured from view. So it was kind of hard to see. We get into the final stretch, and Alice and Bill, the last remaining counselors, they grow suspicious when they notice the others are missing. Bill investigates and is killed off screen. What off-screen kills?
I noted that as well.
Yeah. Later, he is revealed to be pinned to a door with arrows.
Would have loved to have. It makes me sound like a bad person, but would love to have seen it.
Yeah. This is definitely. They worked with what they had. Again, nothing against Betsy Palmer. Nothing against this. It started a massive franchise, but just a lot of you had to suspend belief in a lot of this, and just say because plot, even though it was kind of rough.
Well, one thing that I noticed too was, in this first Friday the 13th, the killer is using all different kinds of weapons.
Yep.
I mean, we've had an arrowhead through. I think it's an arrowhead spear through the throat. We've had the arrow on the doors. In later movies with this, he's all about the machete, and that's basically his only weapon.
Debatable. I mean,
there's certain things he's picked up and done, but he always goes back to the machete.
Yeah.
And in this beginning chapter of the franchise, that's not the case.
Yep. Alice discovers his body, Bill's body, and realizes she is alone.
She's our final girl.
Yep. This is a tense sequence, and it follows as she barricades herself in a cabin, arming herself with anything available.
And can I say something? So smart of her to have taken that rope.
Yep.
I mean, that is such. I was watching this, obviously together. I was watching this going, she was a Girl Scout.
Yep.
Somebody taught her well that I wouldn't have thought that. I mean, how many other horror movies do we see that, you lock the door, you barricade the door? That's kind of the go-to, like, fight or flight, right?
Yep.
Is that to do? But this is thought out of a really smart way to make sure that no one can get through that door.
Yep. Mrs. Voorhees is finally revealed. A Jeep pulls up to the camp, and Alice runs out thinking it's help. She meets Pamela Voorhees, a seemingly kind of older woman who claims to be a friend of the Christie family. However, Pamela's demeanor shifts as she is revealed that her son, shifts as she reveals that her son Jason drowned at the camp due to a counselor neglect in 1957. Pamela blames the counselors and admits to killing them to prevent the camp from reopening. This was the part where I thought was total BS. Okay,
really? Okay.
Because not because of, but literally right before she pulls up in the Jeep, she throws a body through the window of the cabin.
Right.
How did she throw the body
before?
Yeah, how did she throw that body through there and then go up to where the Jeep wasn't seen and drive in and say, "Oh, Mrs. Voorhees," not out of breath.
Yep.
Just complete calm.
And in a sweater,
in a sweater, no sweat.
Yeah.
Looked like thick hair.
Yeah.
I just don't understand. It's, and again, it's not a deal breaker. I did knock a point off for that, honestly, in my grading for that, but that was one of my big issues.
I will say in that scene, amazing acting, amazing to see her kind of go again, similar to kind of how I saw myself. If I was Annie, I would think, "Oh, I'm safe." Alice is probably thinking, "Oh, there's finally someone here with a car that can get me away." And again, female lens here, but thinking, "Oh, it's another woman that's going to protect me, get me out of here." And then this monologue of you can just see her kind of stepping into her anger and her insanity and her psychosis about what happened to her son.
Yeah.
I think that part was beautifully done.
Yep.
But to your point, the timing and the ability here.
Yep.
Yeah.
We then get to the final battle. Obviously, like we said, Pamela is revealed as the killer. A relentless cat and mouse sequence ensues between Alice and Mrs. Voorhees. Alice fights back using various weapons, including a fireplace poker and a rifle. The struggle culminates at the lakefront, where Alice decapitates Pamela with a machete in a shocking and triumphant moment. Now, I love this scene. However, I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what you said earlier. It's interesting that in the point of view kills, the POV, the first person point of view kills, people are killed very uniquely. Some with weapons, others with objects around, environmental, like, just picking up random stuff. But then when we actually see Pamela and Alice, it's a bitch slap session. They're slap happy.
Yeah.
And then I feel like there was like not much of a transition. It goes from 0 to 60. They're like I said, they're slap happy. Boom, cuts her head off.
Yep.
I'm like, all right, I get it. I mean, to live, I would chop her head off too.
Yeah.
But it was such a dynamic shift from no weapons at all, no unique kills. You're not hung on a door with several arrows. Just bam, slices her head off. Crazy to me.
Yeah.
We then see an exhausted Alice as she climbs into a canoe and drifts into the lake. As dawn breaks, serene music plays and Alice appears safe. Suddenly, and this was awesome, Jason's decayed corpse bursts from the water, pulling her into the lake in a shocking jump scare. Alice then wakes up in the hospital, where she learns that no one found Jason's body, and her final words, "Then he's still there," leaving an ominous ambiguity.
And I love that they, similar kind of fashion as the end of Carrie, the music is very soothing, and you just think, oh, this is, a good, happy ending.
Yep.
Beautifully done, but I have questions.
Yep. In our closing scene, the film ends with a shot of still the lake, leaving the audience with lingering dread, setting the stage for the future of the franchise. Part 2 does the same thing, pretty much. It's all POV kills. It's Jason as an older adult. But yeah.
And that's one of the questions I want to ask you. So we have the time frame, 1957, he drowns.
Yep.
Supposedly. He's what, 10 or under?
Yep.
And now here it is, 1980, and he's still a little boy when he comes out of the water.
Yep.
So in this version, in this rendition, he's a ghost of the little boy. I just kind of found myself questioning.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the ending, it's kind of like an I Know What You Did Last Summer ending, where we don't know if any of that really happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could have been her dream. Now that we're talking about it, I've always kind of said, well, it was really Jason. I don't know now, and it doesn't take away from the fact that I still give Ari Lehman the first Jason credit. He deserves that for sure. But as far as the story goes, I don't know. That's a good question.
And then I had another. I've seen this movie countless times, but when we were doing this review, I had kind of a fan theory, and I wondered something specifically along the lines of what we have talked about, her physical ability to do these killings, move these bodies, set up these things, immediately get into a Jeep, things like that. I had a kind of conspiracy theory thought here. I'm wondering if Jason was helping his mother throughout the whole first of the first movie of the franchise.
Yeah.
And he was the one that threw the body through the window, and then that's how she's able to be immediately in the Jeep. Now, help me out. This is just a thought process that I had while watching it this time. I have not done any Googling research. If anyone out there feels the same way, thinks the same way, have seen something fan theory, I'd love to see it.
Yep.
But I just thought, well, that could explain a lot of how Pamela Voorhees was here and doing this, and maybe some of the off-scene kills was truly Jason as an adult. And the point of view ones were Mrs. Voorhees, Pamela.
Potentially.
Yeah, it was a thought.
Yep.
I know nothing of that as being fact.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know either, honestly. It would be something to explore further.
Yeah.
One little just cringe moment for me, and this is just personally for me. I cringe as I even say it now because I'm in this situation. There's a point where Alice was napping and sleeping fully clothed, and she was wearing a belt. Now, little fun thing about me, I hate being in jeans and fully dressed at home. Even right now, as much as I love doing this podcast and the YouTube channel for you, I am fully dressed like I'm going out. My hair's done, my shirt's on, I've got 2 shirts on, my bracelets, my jeans. I hate it when I'm at home. When I'm at home, I am immediately in sweatpants or track pants and just a shirt. For her to lie down and fully clothed, I've only done that once in my life. I remember. I truly, I was miserable. My best
I
friend,
think I only did it once when I had a migraine and I couldn't move.
yeah, my best friend, Mike Davis, that sick, twisted freak, will go to sleep in his jeans, fully dressed, in his work clothing, sometimes with a coat on.
I've seen it.
I'm like,
100%.
what is wrong with you? You are twisted.
He's just that exhausted.
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm fat, but I just have to be in comfortable clothes. And jeans are comfortable out, but I'm not going to go over to your house and watch, do a movie marathon in my jeans. I'm coming over. Yeah, I'll wear pants, but I'm coming over in comfy clothes. Don't expect me to wear a tux.
Yeah.
Just watch movies.
There was a few things about Alice, and you'll have to remind me, the camp director that was at the beginning and then he disappeared and was supposed to be back by dinner. They're having this romance, and they have this whole long conversation about how she's giving him one last chance or else she's going to be moving back to California. And I'm like, can we see some of this? Really? What happened? What made her upset? And then also, why is he there? And then he's kind of like the group project kid that's there at the beginning, then leaves, and then comes back and is like, well, I'm still a director.
Yeah.
It's an odd dynamic between the two of them.
One real interesting note out of my last kind of notes here. To me, it's very interesting that Jason Voorhees is the one that gets the credit for this franchise. When this franchise is starting, when the franchise starts out with Pamela as the killer, we have other films like Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream. We have all of these established character killers, Chucky, even, everything you can think of, and they're the legend, the OG, the original. Jason doesn't even get his hockey mask until the third one. The second one is a sack, and then the first one is Pamela, and he pops up at the end. You see him in flashbacks. So it's interesting that Jason Voorhees took on the mantle, of the face of this. Obviously, my shirt has every version of Jason to date, and it's crazy that he gets the credit for Friday.
It's the typical man getting the credit for the woman's hard work. I mean, look what mom did, and the son just digs all the credit.
Yeah. Okay. So we are getting into the interesting things of note. I have a little bit of a surprise for you here.
Uh-oh.
This is going to be a hefty section of interesting things of note.
I wondered, because you went through that plot summary faster than what you usually do.
Not necessarily, it's kind of what I was able to kind of find, but there.
One thing.
Well,
I know one interesting thing, though.
What's that?
And if you've got it on the list, you're just going to have to skip it, because I want to claim one thing. That the that we get is actually a broken down from Mrs. Voorhees.
It is in here. We'll talk about that.
I think that's a pretty cool thing that they were able to pull that little soundbite and create something that you can literally go to any horror fan and go, and you know what you're talking about.
I'm going to tell you this right now, and I'm going to tell the viewers and listeners too, that if you're only here for the ratings, I don't want you to skip this, but if you feel obliged, go ahead. But I have 3 sections of interesting things of note.
Oh, goodness.
But the reason why I didn't tell you is because I didn't want you to think about it or research it, because you're a legal assistant. And for those who don't know, including you, Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees, they've been in a legal battle now since 2000, or since the mid 10s. And so I want to talk about that. But so I'm going to talk about the interesting things of note for this film. And then we're going to go into the legalities of the franchise, and then the legalities of the video game that have spawned from because of the franchise. So here we go. Are you strap in? If you like the interesting things of note and you've always been kind of curious about this, from my research, this is what you're in for. Again, if you're just here for the rating, feel free to skip past or listen to us on 2 times or whatever.
And get prepared to hear a lot of Brandon.
All right. So starting just kind of with the interesting things I know about the film. The original inspiration for this film was Halloween. In 1978, producer and director Sean Cunningham was looking for a model on which to build a commercially successful film, and he found one in Carpenter's horror classics, Halloween. The 2 films ultimately don't share much other than a very broad slasher trope type of film, but Cunningham said, and he actually says this on the Crystal Lake Memories documentary, he says he was very influenced by the structure of Carpenter's film. I like that movie. I want to do it too. That's almost a direct quote. I remember he was saying that.
And I said to myself, if I had a film called Friday the 13th, I could sell that.
And Sean called me up and said, Halloween is making incredible money at the box office. Let's rip it off. That is keeping it real.
The film was being advertised before it even had financing. Hoping to drum up publicity for his project, Cunningham took out an ad in the 4th of July of 1979 edition of Variety, featuring the film's now iconic logo bursting through the glass. At this time, the general structure of the film was in place, but Georgetown Productions had not yet fully agreed to finance it, and an advertised November of 1979 release date was a pipe dream. Still, Cunningham did get a response from the ad. Everybody wanted this film, he later said. The screenwriter had a very different title in mind. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is where a lot of the legal battles come in. Though Cunningham was very quickly latched onto the idea of Friday the 13th as a title, before the film got made, screenwriter Victor Miller originally came up with something else. In spring of '79, he was originally calling the film The Long Night at Camp Blood. Many of the special effects were quote unquote baked in the camp's kitchen. Tom Savini, who is a makeup legend, a makeup effects legend.
Oh yeah.
Thanks in part to his work on Friday the 13th. In making the film, he and assistant Taso Starvakis actually ended up using the camp to finalize special makeup effects. According to Savini, many of the latex appliances ultimately used to create the film's gruesome murders were baked in pizza ovens at the camp where the movie was filmed. Kind of cool.
Yeah.
The camp used for filming is still operational. Camp Crystal Lake is actually Camp No Bosco, a fully operational camp that cast and crew were granted access to after campers left for the summer in '79. It is still in use today. They actually do, it's kind of neat. They actually do almost like Comic-Con type of stuff, but at the camp. Like you can stay there for the weekend.
Cool.
Adrian King has done it. I think Ari's gone out there. It's pretty neat. I want to do one someday. I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah. I'd love to know if anyone has had anything weird happen.
Yeah.
Like I get this isn't a paranormal. I'm not saying necessarily when I said weird, it's not paranormal, but just weird, spooky, like made you jump. Like
Sure.
you said, you already have a weird feeling because of the location and everything.
Yep. Kevin Bacon was not the only big name in this film. Though he is without question the biggest name in the movie now, Kevin Bacon hadn't done much prior to Friday the 13th, apart from things like a small role in Animal House. At this time, the film's biggest name was Harry Crosby, son of the deceased legendary singer Bing Crosby, who was played by Bill. The character Bill was Bing Crosby's son. Shelley Winters was the first choice for Mrs. Voorhees. For the now iconic role for Mrs. Pamela Voorhees, Cunningham and Company went in search of an actress with a recognizable name whose career was nevertheless on the decline, so she could be paid relatively little and the budget could stay low. Cunningham eventually made a list of actresses he was considering, and two-time Oscar winner Shelley Winters was his top choice. Unfortunately, Winters was not interested, and while fellow candidate and Oscar winner Estelle Parsons actually was in negotiations to be in the film, she ultimately backed out. Cunningham also considered actresses Louise Lasser and Dorothy Malone right up until filming began, but ultimately the production would wound up with Betsy Palmer in the role.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
So another interesting thing to note here, going along with the Pamela Voorhees role, Betsy Palmer ultimately took the part so she could buy a new car. When Cunningham finally got around to offering Palmer the part of Mrs. Voorhees, she suddenly found herself in need of cash. After more than a year on Broadway, her car broke down as she drove back to her home in Connecticut. She might have never taken the movie if she hadn't needed the money for a new car. She's quoted as saying, "I got home at 5 a.m, and it was a situation where I desperately needed a new car," Pamela said. "If I hadn't needed a car, I don't think I would have done Friday the 13th. So we would not have had that legendary performance had she not needed a new car." It's kind of funny. Several of the crew members played the killer before Palmer was cast. Even as filming got underway, Cunningham was still looking for an actress to play Mrs. Voorhees. So many of the early murder scenes that you see in the film were actually shot without Betsy Palmer, but with members of the crew standing in for her, the hands of the murderer.
As the first person.
Yep.
Like POV.
For example, when Annie, Robbie Morgan's character, was when her throat was cut early in the film, special effects assistant Tassos Stavrakis is the one wielding the knife.
Maybe that's how Mrs. Voorhees was able to do all of these.
Well, sure, obviously, outside of it, but yeah. Betsy Palmer gave Mrs. Voorhees a detailed backstory. When she was finally cast, Palmer dove deep into her character. As a method actor, she wanted to know more about the character than the audience, and came up with a backstory that built the killer's hatred of sexual transgression. In her mind, Pamela had Jason out of wedlock with a high school boyfriend, and her parents ultimately disowned her for her sins because that, quote-unquote, isn't something the good girls do. Yeah.
Again, it plays into that trope
Yeah.
of, although it twists it a little bit by making her the future killer, but...
Well, I like reading that too, though, because you go from someone just needing cash for a car to then not only, how many actors do you see, whether it's on a podcast or an interview, they're like, "Oh yeah, I played the role of this. I don't really remember anything, I don't really know." But for her to take this and make it her own and give it a backstory, it ultimately didn't end up just being about money for the car. She cared about the character. And as I've seen in footage, like with her talking to fans and just being so happy and joyous. And I really think that it was, kind of one of those destiny things or God things, if you will, that she was supposed to be in this movie.
And it speaks to her character.
It does.
She didn't, not just the character she's playing,
Right.
but her integrity, because, she didn't have to do that, and it seems like arguably the writers and director and producers didn't do that. So for her to, knowing that her character is only going to be in this part of the movie,
Yep.
that she wanted to ensure that it was done well. Kudos.
Jason was just a regular kid in the first draft of this film. In Victor Miller's original script, the character of Jason Voorhees was basically just a kid who accidentally drowned in Crystal Lake. But financier Philip Scuderi, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Scuderi, wanted something more and brought in screenwriter Ron Kurz for some rewrites. One of Kurz's most important contributions to the film was to transform the tragic boy into a deformed child that we see in the final movie.
Which they never really explain the deformity, do they?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, if the story is, what Betsy Palmer gave it, maybe she had the child prematurely.
Yeah.
Maybe he was a teenager, maybe he was older in the lake, and that's why he drowned. I mean, that could give some insight to it. One actor was temporarily blinded by fake blood. For the scene in which Bill, Harry Crosby, Bing Crosby's son, is killed by multiple arrows, one of which landed in his eye, Tom Savini used a fake blood formula that included a wetting agent called PhotoFlow, which was supposed to make the fake blood soak into clothing, and it looked more realistic. Unfortunately, PhotoFlow is not an ingredient used for quote-unquote safe blood, meaning blood that's going to be entering the face of an actor. For the arrow in the eye moment, a latex appliance was applied to Crosby's face along with the blood. As the scene was shot, the blood welled up into Crosby's eyes, causing intense pain when the appliance was removed. So our unsafe, Savini is quoted as saying, "Our unsafe blood had an opportunity to fill up Harry's eyes under the appliance used to keep the arrow looking like it was in his eye, and its surface burned poor Harry," Savini said. Not a proud moment. Kevin Bacon's iconic death. That took hours of the film, and it almost didn't work. Perhaps the most iconic death of the film occurs when Jack is killed with an arrow shoved through his throat from underneath the bed he's lying on. It is a brilliant special effects moment, and was also the most complex death scene in the film. To make it work, Bacon had to crouch under the bed, insert his head through a hole in the mattress, and then the latex neck and then a latex neck and chest appliance were attached to give the appearance that he was actually lying down. Getting the setup right took hours, and Bacon had to stay in that uncomfortable position the entire time. For the bloody final moment, Savini, also under the bed, would plunge the arrow up through the fake neck, while his assistant, also under the bed, operated a pump that would make the fake blood flow up through the appliance.
I've seen, it may have been in a documentary.
It was in a documentary, yeah.
And all I have to say is the claustrophobia
Yeah.
of being under that bed with two other humans
Yeah.
for the hours that it took, with all of the contraptions and the mess and the blood, and then cleaning it up and then redoing it again. That's amazing.
Yep. To further complicate things, the crew needed someone to stand in for the killer's hand as it held Bacon's head down, and they settled on still photographer Richard Fury. So after hours of setup and latex building and planning, it was finally time to shoot that scene. And when the moment of truth came, the hose for the blood pump disconnected. Knowing that he basically only had one take, otherwise they'd had to build the new latex appliance and set everything back up again. Stavrakis grabbed the hose and blew into it until the blood flowed out. He saved the scene. He's quoted as saying, "I had to think quick, so I just grabbed the hose and blew like crazy," which thankfully caused a serendipitous arterial blood spray. Yep.
If you rewatch that scene knowing this now, you can definitely tell, but it's almost like a natural, what you would think would be natural when someone would be pierced there.
Yep.
So it's great that it worked.
Stavrakis said the blood actually didn't taste that bad either.
Did they use cornstarch?
They must have.
Like in Carrie?
Corn syrup, yeah.
Corn syrup.
The final scene, this is the last little bit of the first section of interesting things to note. The final scene was not in the original script. The story of who invented that final scare in the film, in which a deformed Jason bursts out of the lake and grabs Alice, played by Adrienne King, from her canoe, is disputed. Victor Miller, Tom Savini, and an uncredited screenwriter, Ron Kurz, all claim credit for it. Kurz because he claims to be the one who made Jason into a creature, and Savini because he claims the moment was inspired by a similar film, Final Scare in Carrie. Whatever the case, it left a lasting impression. And here's what you're talking about with the theme music. The main theme music came from a line of dialogue When composing the score for the film, composer Harry Manfredini, so I guess this is more of the final point. Composer Harry Manfredini was looking for a distinctive sound to identify any point in which the killer appeared in the scene. When he saw it was a first person point of view, he heard Mrs. Voorhees imitating Jason saying, "Kill her, mommy, kill her," and decided that was the key. So he took the two syllables from the line of dialogue,
Kills.
spoke them himself. He said it and made the iconic sound. He's quoted as saying, "So I got the idea of the k from kill and the ma from mommy, but then spoke them very harshly, distinctively, rhythmically into a microphone and run them through the 70s echo thing," is what he said. It came up as you hear it today. So every time there was the perspective of the stalker, I put that in the score. Kill, ma, ma, ma. Kill, ma. Okay. So here we are. We're getting into this legal battle. The Friday the 13th franchise has been embroiled into a complex legal battle that centers on copyright of ownership of the original 1980s film and its iconic character Jason Voorhees. This legal dispute has significantly impacted the series, including its ability to produce new films and merchandise. And to get into it, all right. So the key players: Victor Miller. Victor Miller is the screenwriter of the original Friday the 13th in 1980. He created the storyline and the character of young Jason Voorhees. However, Sean S. Cunningham was the director and producer of the original film and a pivotal figure in the franchise development. A company called Horror Inc., which is Cunningham's production company, and owns the franchise rights to the sequels and the iconic adult version of Jason. So when he's in the hockey mask. Mm-hmm. And then we get to the actual legal dispute. This dispute hinges on U.S. copyright law, particularly in the termination of rights provision, which allows creators to reclaim copyrights after 35 years. The origins of this legal battle. The legal issues began in 2016 when Victor Miller filed a claim under the U.S. Copyright Act to reclaim the rights to his original screenplay of Friday the 13th. The law allowed creators to terminate the transfer of rights to their works after 35 years, effectively giving them ownership again. Miller argued that he was an independent contractor when he wrote the script, making him eligible to reclaim the copyright. Horror Inc. And Sean Cunningham contested Miller's claim, arguing that Miller was an employee for hire and therefore not entitled to terminate his copyright. They also claimed that the franchise and its success were significantly shaped by elements introduced in later films, like the adult version of Jason with the hockey mask, which did not appear in the original movie, but rather first appeared in the third film. You know, this is interesting because it's like, it kind of reminds me of the show Silicon Valley. I know you've never gone through it, but the main character on that show creates software, a software program called Pied Piper, but he did it working at the company that he worked for. So, you know, yes, he's the creator, but
yeah, it's not his intellectual property.
exactly. Key legal issues in this legal battle. Work for hire versus independent contractor. Horror Inc. claimed that Miller was a work for hire employee, like we said, meaning the rights to the screenplay would belong to the company, like we said. Miller argued that he worked as an independent contractor, giving him the right to reclaim the copyright.
How odd is it that there's in the specific bylaws or the contract with this that 35 years they could terminate rights?
Right.
That just seems, I mean, I know like with patent law and things like that, there are some time frames where you have to refile and everything.
Well, and Taylor Swift is going through with her music.
Well, that's a whole nother pit and caboodle. That's not, based on the time of it. But she sold rights or something. And anyway, it just seems odd that there's a time frame to it. That, that like a ticking clock of, that right at 35 years now we can swoop in and take someone else's material and ideas. That's kind of weird.
The second point, the scope of copyright. So Miller's termination claim only applies to the original film and elements created. So this is where it separates. the story, the characters, like young Jason Voorhees and Camp Crystal Lake. Now, adult Jason, the hockey mask, and other elements introduced in sequels are not a part of Miller's claim. So he's only trying to claim rights to the original Friday, probably the title Friday the 13th, and, characters there.
But it does get so muddy.
It does.
Because, okay, you can argue that Mrs. Voorhees, Pamela Voorhees, isn't in the rest of the franchise.
Right. Well, sort of. She's in, too, her head.
Well,
and you see visions of her.
Yes. But you are taking the original Jason, and yes, you're changing him to being an adult and a machete and a hockey mask, and there's changes that you made to it, but it's still that character started in that movie. So, this is why lawyers are paid like what they are.
Yeah. Court rulings. In 2018, Victor Miller wins the initial victory. A U.S. District Court ruled in favor of Miller, declaring that he was an independent contractor and thus entitled to reclaim the rights to his original screenplay. The decision granted Miller's rights to the original Friday the 13th film in the United States. But the second point, appeals and complications. Horror Inc. appealed the ruling, arguing that Miller's claim did not account for the franchise's evolution and that it created issues for international rights. You got to deal with other countries as well. I mean, people, you see movies being distributed and coming, to different, at different times and everything. A good example, Grafted, the film we were talking about earlier, that film came out a long time, like a while ago. Like Shudder bought the rights to that to show it in the States, and it just came out January 24th here.
Well, and I think it's one of those things where a person can be very creative and come up with amazing ideas, but you also kind of have to know the legality, the nuts and bolts. You can come up with a great idea, but to show like this, if it started in the U.S., but then now it's in other countries, then you've got international laws and rules and regulations. The FCC is here, but it's not the same in other. We see this all the time with back in the day when there was the CDs or album covers, and you would have Jessica Simpson in a spaghetti strap top, but when it's distributed in other more conservative countries, totally different artwork, or it's been painted over. They have to make changes. They have to do things different. So then you have the argument, if they distribute in another country, but they have to change XYZ for those laws, then you say, oh, well, it's still not the original idea. It almost can give you a headache.
It's also reminiscent of like music rights too, because, when a couple examples, I think it was Supernatural's season 1 finale. They were playing Triumph's Fight the Good Fight in the original. I remember that.
Watch it on Netflix.
Yep.
That ain't it.
That's not on there. The Expendables. There was that action song, whatever. I don't even remember what the original song was now, but when they're infiltrating and killing all the bad guys, there's they overplayed a new boule boule, whatever that song is that they play. Yeah. It's not the original that was in theater, nor was it. I don't know if they changed it for the DVD or not, but it's weird because music, even being on YouTube, like, I show these clips. Obviously, none of this is copyrighted in mine, but things get very complicated with sound. Another good example, I remember when they're at the end of Power Rangers and Beast Morphers, they were showing, they were kind of doing this big like anniversary thing where they were trying to figure out, all right, what kind of bad guy can we get or whatever, and they were showing clips of bad guys from previous seasons, and I remember there was a thing where they were talking about it. Somebody's talking about it, and they said, well, we can show the clip, but if we have their voice in there with it, we have to pay the actor. So what they do, they dubbed over it with voice actors from New Zealand or wherever, because the show.
Milli Vanilli situation.
Yeah. So it's
and this is a horror podcast. I'm not going to go into deep about it.
Yep.
But obviously, something that's kind of contemporary that's happening right now is It Ends With Us.
Yep.
And I loved that book so much. It Starts With Us is a great sequel to it. highly recommend the book to everyone, even though the movie is not my cup of tea. To me, they didn't do the story right. But I would love to see Justin's version of the movie to see how close it is to the book that I love.
Yeah.
But obviously, they're just like we said, we're filming this at the end of January. They just set a trial date for them. It's going to be caught up in such legality of who owns what intellectual property, what can truly be shown. And it's like, I really wish that he could reserve his rights, because he bought the rights to make the movie, right? He and Wayfair, that possibly maybe he could just make an entire new, it ends without those parties involved. But then you could argue that
I mean, we're in reboot culture anyway.
We are in reboot culture, but I just wish it would be sooner rather than later.
Sure.
But it's just another example, right, of intellectual creativity butting heads with the legality of things.
And I hear they're actually changing the name of it.
Oh,
It ends with us in court. The final court ruling on this, at least from our notes here, 2021, the final ruling upheld Miller's victory. The U.S. Supreme Court of Appeal, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit affirmed the earlier decision, cementing Miller's rights to the original screenplay and characters created in 1980. However, this ruling did not resolve rights to sequels nor international distribution, leaving those aspects controlled by Horror Inc.
And one thing to know, this is really general legal information here. You have different levels of court, so it is kind of important. You read over that this is Circuit Court 2, and okay, whatever. That actually means that this has gone rounds.
Yeah. It's
probably started in Superior Court, and then it goes up to Circuit Court, and then it goes up to Circuit Court 2, and then not that a movie, I don't believe, has ever gone that far, but this is how you end up with Supreme Court cases, because they've gone through all of these battles, these rounds of lawsuits and counter lawsuits. And so that right there, just hearing that it's in Circuit 2 means that they've gone back and forth.
Well, and which this actually leads into the next section of this. Because of all this back and forth, because of all these different subsections of law, what's allowed, what's not, this has really caused implications for the franchise. There are split rights. Victor Miller owns the U.S. Copyright to the original Friday the 13th script and its elements. However, Horror Inc. Retains the rights to the sequels and the adult version of Jason Voorhees, including the hockey mask. This split has created a legal and creative quagmire, complicating the development of new films, TV shows, and merchandise. Probably why they haven't put out any more NECA figures for Jason. I don't think we have one for young Ari.
It honestly makes me wonder if they could potentially do a franchise where he's younger.
Yep. There have been no
hockey mask,
right? But they're coming out with that Crystal Lake show.
Oh,
I guess that's still in the works.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's supposed to be like
he's going to be young.
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know. There's not many details about it. But there haven't been any new films since 2009. That reboot, which I don't want to say too much about it, but my favorite reboot of all the slashers.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's up there for me. When we go to review it, you'll see if it's my number one. But I think it's up there.
Yeah.
There's some really cool scenes in that.
Yep. The legal battle effectively halted the franchise. With no new Friday the 13th film since 2009, the 2009 reboot. Plans for sequels, reboots, and or spin-offs have been stalled due to the uncertainty over who can use what elements of this franchise.
Yeah, they've had a long run.
Yep.
There's a lot of these movies.
Yep.
But it is kind of sad that this is how it's going to fizzle out.
Yeah.
Or out. Hopefully not.
I'm torn about it because at the one hand, I like what we have of Jason. We can, and Friday the 13th and whatnot. I love the films that have been made. I love the fact that, I can go back and watch my favorite ones. Some of them are a little bit weirder than others, but there's, for the most part, I feel like I can find something enjoyable about all of them. You don't have this lingering, oh my gosh, are they going to ruin Jason? Like Scream, or, rebooting things. It's you don't have that, but at the same time, it would be nice to see Jason again.
Yeah.
And
in a new, not necessarily completely new, but in a new storyline, in a new group of teenagers, a new something. It's kind of sad to stifle the creativity that could be.
Yep. There have been merchandise limitations as well. Licensing agreements for Jason Voorhees merchandise have also been impacted, with restrictions based on which versions of Jason's can be depicted. I remember waiting for a Kane Hodder Jason. As we, if you don't know, Kane Hodder played Jason the most. He played Jason Voorhees in parts 7, 8, 9, and 10. Which that's a whole other story that we'll get into later. I feel, the way that his run as Jason ended I feel bad for him. And especially what happened to him in real life too. Such a nice guy. He's always been nice to me. I remember waiting for a Jason figure, from him, from one of his films. I would, for the NECA version, a lot of these are NECA. I've got some movie maniacs above us if you're watching on YouTube here. A lot of, where am I? Oh, my finger. Yep. Though, like, some of these more are NECAs, but a lot of movie maniacs are over here. But all of my Jason NECAs are over there, and I would love to have an Ari figure or another a Pamela Voorhees. I know they've made a cloth one, but it would be nice to have one. This has also halted future projects. In 2022, it was announced that a Friday the 13th. It was announced that a Friday the 13th prequel series called Crystal Lake was in development. Since it explores the events prior to the original film, it is likely to be able to navigate through the legal constraints. The show is being developed by Victor Miller in collaboration with A24 and Brian Fuller.
I would like to see what Pamela Voorhees was doing from 1957, and we see the one couple get killed in 1958, and then she just chills out until 1980, and because they're reopening the camp.
Yep.
I kind of would like to see that, like, mother's revenge.
Yep.
Like, modern take on it, and maybe see not just one couple a year later, but I think that there's a lot of cool stuff that could be done with that.
Yeah. I'm torn about it and I'm sure that Victor Miller is too. I'm sure that no matter how much this has impacted him in his life and whatnot, I'm sure he would like to be able to explore a future Jason in his mind. But at the same time, it would be kind of cool to see some of those gaps and see the age and, maybe the why, and whatnot. So
just got to wait 35 more years.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. The Friday the 13th legal battle highlights the complexities of copyright law in the entertainment industry, especially with this long-running franchise. It underscores how differing interpretations of creative contributions and intellectual property rights can lead to prolonged disputes and the impact of both creators and fans. Now, this has also impacted the game. The game is no more.
It was so fun.
It was fun. It was really cool how they would randomly
gamer, and I really did like that.
I did too.
A lot.
This legal battle has caused development constraints. Friday the 13th, the game, was released during the height of the legal dispute in May 2017. The game included various iterations of Jason Voorhees, different versions of Camp Crystal Lake, and a host of features drawn from the film series. The developers worked closely with Sean Cunningham and Horror Inc., who owned the rights to later films and Jason's adult design.
So you think they'd safe?
Right. This allowed the game to feature elements like the hockey mask and Jason's iconic weapons. However, there was a content freeze. In June of 2018, Gun Media announced that they would cease adding new content to the game due to the ongoing legal battle. The company explained that while the game could continue operating with existing content, no new material could be created or added. They had planned updates, including new maps, characters, and game modes, but they were shelved indefinitely. Very disappointed by fans. I wasn't playing this regularly, and I know you weren't either, but
I played it several times.
Yeah.
I really did enjoy it. I will say I am not a big online gamer.
Yep.
Don't like the back and forth of somebody, it's funny to say because we're doing this channel, but the kind of the back and forth of outside commentary while you're trying to play the game.
Yeah.
But for those of you that haven't played it, you kind of get randomized where you log in to play the game and you're either one of the victims trying to stay safe throughout the night, or you're Jason himself as he stated in one of the iterations. So you don't really even know which Jason you're going to be.
Yep.
And what
I like that.
Then,
It was cool because you didn't know if you were going to be a victim or Jason.
Exactly.
I remember when you start and you're like, oh, sweet, I'm Jason.
I'm Jason finally. Yeah.
Oh, but it was also fun on the campsite because it's like, all right, how am I going to hide?
Yes. And
The camper side.
And again, if you hadn't played, like there were different, like you could hide in this closet or you could pick up this,
Yep.
To be on defense, and it would have like a timer for the night.
Yep.
So then it would be like you won because you stayed safe, or you won because you killed all of the campers. It was really fun.
Yeah.
I personally, I stopped playing it because of the online.
Yeah.
Of sometimes people are not so nice, and it kind of took away. To me, it was a little distracting.
Yeah.
When I'm gaming, I kind of want to be in the zone, not listening to someone else.
Yeah. Well, and I and listeners and or viewers out there, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think, I don't know this for sure. I'd have to look. This is something I did not look into that I should have looked into. I think if you still have the actual console game, I think you can still play with people at home. Like, I think you can put it on whatever you have it for, and then you can play with like a group of four. Again, I don't quote me on that. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I'm almost. Like, why wouldn't you be able to put a game into a thing and play it? You know what I mean? Because there wasn't really. I didn't play a story mode. If there was, there could have been.
Neither.
Yeah.
I only played the online there for a little bit.
So a little bit more about the game.
I would have played it more if I knew it was going to go away.
Yeah. Existing content and licensing. The legal disputes did not affect existing content already included in the game prior to the freeze. Players could still access maps, counselors, and various Jason skins. However, the inability to expand the game's content led to stagnation in its player base over time. Dedicated server shutdown. In November 2020, Gun Media announced the shutdown of the game's dedicated servers. While the games remained playable via peer-to-peer matchmaking, the lack of new content and server support signaled a significant decline in its active community. It came to a permanent stalemate as the resolution of the legal battle in 2021, which granted Victor Miller's rights to the original film in the U.S., did not lift the restrictions on new content for the game. The split ownership of the franchise still created complications for the licensing. The licensing agreement expiration. The license to use the Friday the 13th intellectual property expired in 2023. This means the game can no longer be sold or updated, though existing owners can still play it. So I guess you can still play it. Its legacy. Despite the challenges, Friday the 13th, the game remains a beloved entry in the asymmetrical multiplayer game. It paved the way for other horror games such as Dead by Daylight, which includes other versions of slasher villains. I know two things about this too. I believe the servers shut down completely December 31st of 2024. So it's no longer you can't play it online at all. But I also do know that they started a Texas Chainsaw game because of this. They probably were like, well, I guess we can't mess with this. So, broader implications for the franchise. Missed opportunities. The legal dispute has stifled the franchise growth across all media, and that's including games, films, TV series, action figures. Projects leveraging the film's full potential, like a modern video game sequel, remains on hold due to legal licensing hurdles. The potential for future games, with the legal situation partially resolved, there is speculation that a new game could be developed in the future. However, any new project would need to carefully navigate the division of rights between Victor Miller and Warren. This is one of those things where, and I know there's, between two parties, there's always some kind of beef, or there has been, I'm sure you've got beef with somebody. I know I've got beef with people that I don't want to have beef with, but I do. And, it's so simple to just be like, can't you just get along? And I hate that because there are instances in pop culture where it's like, do you guys know that you could be printing money if you would just squash it? But that's where principle comes in over money.
Can't you just get along and make a movie about killing people?
And instead of killing our dreams?
Yeah, come on.
No, but I understand. Okay, so that wraps it up for the interesting things to note. Thank you for going through it with us. But now we're on to the death count. How many people do you think were killed in this?
Well, both what we don't see and what we see. I want to say 7.
No, actually 10.
Oh, 10.
So you got Barry, took a knife to the stomach. Claudette, killed off screen.
No.
You've got Annie, had her throat slit with a knife. Yep, Ned. Throat slit off scene. Jack, with the arrow through the back of the neck. Marcy, Brenda, Steve Christie, the hunting knife to the stomach. Bill, and finally Mrs. Voorhees was her head was decapitated, obviously. So, all right. So, hey, Katie, what's your favorite scene in this movie?
Hold on, I gotta get back to my notes after that long, interesting.
Well, I'll go ahead and tell you mine. My favorite scene was the chase scene between Pamela Voorhees and Alice. Just how crazy Betsy Palmer looks. She's such a great actress. I just, again, just knowing that she needed to buy a car, to then putting the passion into building a backstory, just to see how she took on the peaceful subtleness of an older lady, but she's crazy. She's, and she did so good with evolving into that crazy character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I actually wrote down a couple of different favorite scenes, and I remember doing this and going, okay, when you go to record, you got to pick one. But I think that I loved the music and the shock value of Alice finding Bill with the arrows. Was a jump. It was great. I think my favorite scene is gonna have to be that when young Jason jumps out of the water.
Yeah.
Again, it's one of the best known scenes of this film. But when you're first watching it, your first run through of it, it's such a great twist of, oh, the little boy that she's been, killing for revenge of his drowning.
Yeah.
Did he really drown? Is this what this is? It makes the movie for me.
One thing I wanted to mention earlier, one thing I forgot to mention, I've met most of the Jason Voorhees actors. A lot of them have been really nice. I didn't get a chance to meet Richard Brooker because, like I said, he died prior to me doing conventions and all that, and he died in 2013. I started doing him in 2012, but that was my first one. But I got to meet Mike DeLuna, who was one of his stunties. He came out of the woodworks a couple of years ago. Really nice guy. But Ari is a very special. Like, I really like him and admire him for two reasons. The first was when I first met him in 2016. He actually gifted me this Jason Voorhees. It's a mask. We were at a con that, for lack of a better word, was a shit show. It was in an abandoned ice rink. It was bad. Nobody showed up. So, in those situations, you kind of trauma bond in those situations, even though it's not real trauma. But, he was so nice to gift me this. Again, this is one of my most prized possessions. I love this necklace so much. And the second thing, which meant even more to me, my cat Xander, who was my soulmate, my favorite pet ever. And when he died, it was very, very hard for me. And I remember Ari put some kind of post on his Facebook page and was like, I know that people are going through a lot right now, and how can I help and whatever. And I commented back with, hey, my cat just died, and he meant the world to me. And I tell you what, man, Ari didn't just say, oh, I'm sorry. He wrote this big, long message. I want to find it again because I know I have it somewhere, but it was just the words he said in his condolences to me meant so much, and it just meant the world. So I just wanted to say that really quick. So what would you say in this film was the best death?
I know I'm probably going to catch some flack, and that's fine. But I love Annie's throat cut.
Okay.
I love it. I think it's realistic. I think that it's creepy and scary, but then when you get to the end of the movie and you find out, like I said earlier, that it's Pamela Voorhees in the woods, you know, an older woman chasing her, and she probably thought she was safe. That was my favorite.
Nice.
Hands down.
Yeah.
There are iconic, you know, Kevin Bacon with through the throat and things like that.
Well, and so I'll lead into that.
But I love
Yep.
that Annie's throat slit.
Yeah. My favorite kill is Jack, Kevin Bacon's. Mostly because just of everything that went through it, you know,
Yeah,
like seeing
the
the behind the
technical.
scenes in that documentary. I you know, Savini being a part of it. I love that kill. I think it's awesome. Um, okay, so we have gotten to the point of our episode where we are going through the Slays rating system. If this is your first episode that you're watching, or if you know you're just tuning in, you know, some people they like to rate when they watch a movie, they rate it by letter grade, or they'll rate it by a number 1 through 10, or they'll rate it by stars.
We do all of it.
We do all three.
We do D, all of the above.
Yeah. So, you know, in our rating system, I'll start us off on this one. I gave this a B+. I know it's a little bit of a surprise because of how much I love the Friday the 13th franchise, but for me, and again, it's interesting because, you know, like I said, Jason is the face of this franchise, but he wasn't the originator of it, and so it makes it unique. But it also means that there are better Friday the 13th films out there, in my opinion. But you know, and I also just kind of had the issues with it. You know, again, how did Pamela Voorhees do all this? I don't really understand how she was able to. The timing of it just was off. Kind of the timing and the age. So I felt like it was still a fair grade to give it a B+. What do you think?
I actually gave it an A-.
Really?
So, you know, sometimes it seems like I usually grade a little bit more harshly than you do, and I end up grading lower, but this time I gave it an A-. I think that it is one of those where you just have to say because plot, and you kind of have to
Suspend belief.
suspend belief. But it gives you everything you want from a slasher film, right?
Sure.
And in my opinion, it goes one step further by the slasher isn't who you think it is. It's not your typical slasher.
Yep.
And then it takes it another step forward with my favorite scene of Jason popping out of the water.
Yep.
So it gave you everything you wanted in a slasher and then some. So, but I did dock it a couple points because of some things you just can't suspend your belief on.
For sure.
What about your rating of the number?
I gave it an 8.5
Huh?
out of 10.
I gave it an 8.
Okay.
Yeah. So close to the same.
Yep. What did you give this a star rating?
I gave it a 4 out of 5.
I gave it a 4 out of 5 as well.
Yeah.
So we were in agreement there.
Yeah.
So another rating system we have, other than, you know, just story quality and everything, you know, giving it a letter grade or a number. We like to go through our films with replay value. What kind of replay value does a film have? You know, I'm sure she's sick of me saying this by now, and I'll try to find other movies to compare it to. But replay value, when we're talking about replay value, we mean how likely are you to watch it again? You know, for me, there are stellar films out there, masterpieces, if you will. The one I always default to is Birdman, the one that stars Michael Keaton. Fantastic film, won Best Picture that year. Don't ever need to see it again. You know, it's not something I feel the need to watch over again. Now, however, you've got films like, say, Batman and Robin, Batman Forever, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. You've got these movies that are just, you know, not great. They weren't critically acclaimed story-wise. They didn't do great at the box office probably, but you just had fun with them. And you can just, if you need something to put on when you're just taking it easy, not doing anything at home. You're cleaning, you're taking a nap, you're trying to get, some side work done, your side hustle. It's just something to put on as background noise. You enjoy it enough to where I just, what? I don't care. I'm going to watch it. It's a comfort movie. So what do you give this? And now, I'm sorry. We grade this in 5 different steps. So will watch repeatedly. You're likely to watch it again. You're neutral on it. You don't really care. Either way. Yeah, I might watch it. Yeah, I might not. You're unlikely to watch it again. Or you never want to see it again. So Katie, for replay value, where do you rank this?
I put down that definitely will watch repeatedly.
Yep.
We have. I did make a little note here on that. That when I think of watching a Jason film,
Yep.
it's sometimes not the first one I think of.
Yep.
Because it's not fully Jason, right? We've talked about that. It's Pamela Voorhees.
Yeah.
But to be fair and honest and candid, I've watched it repeatedly. So that's where I kind of was like, well, I would watch it. I have watched it repeatedly. But if I was saying, oh man, I really want to watch a Jason movie, it wouldn't be the first one I grab.
Yep. And I feel the same way, which is why but this is why I put likely to watch it again. I didn't say we'll watch repeatedly.
Yeah.
I said likely. The reason why, I guess, is because, as much as I love Ari and I love Adrian King, this is not the first one I go to watch again. With the Friday the 13th films, I like to kind of bounce around with them. I don't mean to get ahead of myself, but I like the fun ones. Like Friday the 13th Part 6. That one, I feel like it's a high grade, and I'm probably going to watch that repeat. Yeah, I do watch that repeatedly.
Is that Manhattan?
Manhattan's 8, but that's another one that I watch repeatedly.
Yeah.
I'm going to get laughed like crazy, but Jason X is such a fun movie to watch.
It's campy and it's funny.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love those. I love the fun ones. Like, the even numbered ones, I think, are the fun ones to watch. But there are good things about Part 5, and
I even like the second one.
Yeah.
I like the bag over his head and everything. Now, obviously, it's not the iconic hockey mask, but I even like the second one.
Yep. So I said I'm likely to rewatch this one, but it's more likely that it'll be a once a year watch for me, or it'll be a franchise watch for me. So if I'm trying to watch them all in order or just watch the entire thing, I'll say I'm likely to watch it again. So I couldn't quite go will watch repeatedly because it's not my favorite one, nor is it one that I feel I can just put on while I'm doing. I mean, maybe once in a while I could. Again, if I'm planning to do a franchise watch, but I'm still kind of doing stuff around the house, I'll throw it on. But it's not my go-to.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, I have one final question for you.
Sure.
And I would love, love, love to have the comment section blow up with their theories and ideas on this.
Yep.
In this movie, we are introduced to strip monopoly.
Okay.
What do you think the equivalency ratio is?
I'll trade your Park Place for boobs.
See, I immediately, I'm like, what? Baltic Avenue isn't going to be the same as Boardwalk. Like, and then what do you do when you get sent to jail? How to strip monopoly? What is the logistics of this? What are the rules?
Do you get balls for Baltic?
How do you buy houses?
Because nobody wants balls. I don't mean to be gross. I'm obviously speaking in the context of marriage.
No.
It kind of just takes me back to the McDonald's Monopoly. You always be with your friends, be like, I got Park Place.
Yeah. I mean, like strip poker, you can understand winning the round and you call for an article of clothing. But Monopoly, I just don't feel like would work. Like there would be a lot of what does this equal this, and then how do you pay rent?
Yeah.
Are you stripping for buying the property, or are you stripping for landing and paying rent?
Is a chance card like you take a chance on somebody, you get to make a move?
Yeah, and then the utility tax. How are you going to pay your percentage of?
That's funny.
I really am curious if anyone else has that same thought and what they think equal. Yeah. Be as nice as you can be.
Yep.
In the comment section. But I'm as distracted by that thought when I was watching this again of just how would you do that?
Yeah, that's funny. Well, that about wraps it up for our episode on Friday the 13th, 1980, the original Friday the 13th. What did you guys think of it? Let us know in the comments.
I'd
Send
love
us,
to see your grades.
yeah. You could send us an email, thecouplethatslays@gmail.com if you want to get any comments, any questions, any thoughts. I know we're kind of recording these first kind of 5 classic slashers in the beginning, so we don't have like a lot of feedback. Well, we're the channel and the podcast is still young, so we're still kind of evolving, and like I said in our intro episode, everything you see here might not be the same as next time. I know I'm considering taking these pops out of boxes and just kind of having them, so that might be a change you see. We'll see what happens, but we're evolving, and we're just.
And we would love to hear from you all what you would like to see us review.
Yep.
We have ideas. We have some notes already taken.
Yep.
We'd love to hear from you and know what movie you love, what movie you want to maybe see roasted a little bit that you didn't love.
Yep.
We'd love to hear from you.
Yep. And, if you're listening to us on a podcast, we're on YouTube. Just find us on YouTube at The Couple That Slays. And if you're watching us on YouTube, but you don't want to see our ugly mugs, you can find us on all your major podcast networks. We'd love it if you're on both, or if you're if you care about us, and maybe just hit like and subscribe, share it to your friends. Say, hey, I got this. I saw this fun-loving couple, or I saw this recommendation of a podcast where it's a married couple that have been together for over 10 years, married, and they just talk about horror movies. So. You can also find us on social media. We are, like I said, on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We have a Facebook group discussion page, Threads, X, formerly Twitter, and Bluesky. You can find us at all our handles at The Couple That Slays, with the exception of X, because of their character limits. We had to go with Couple That Slays. But we'd love to connect with you on all things social media. And again, you can email us at thecouplethatslays@gmail.com. And hey, if you like us enough and want to give back, we do have a Patreon. We are kind of still in the works on figuring out how we want to go about that. But it is there. If you want to.
Another thing, we'd love to hear what you would like to see in the tiers.
Yeah. We've got content ideas planned out for the channel on YouTube and podcasts, but anything for bonus media and content, we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to reach out to us, connect. The only thing we asked for is mutual respect between people that are commenting, and mutual respect between the commenters and us. So we all are welcome here. We don't discriminate. Jason Voorhees doesn't discriminate who he kills, and we don't discriminate who watches and listens. So until next time, guys, I'm Brandon.
I'm Katie.
And we are The Couple That Slays Together.
The couple that slays together.